and welcome to Heidi's Happy Acre, where we're actually going to be making some Christmas cookies. Today we're going to make what we call Mocha Krinkles. So let's get going. So the first thing we need to do for Mocha Krinkles is we need to get some brown sugar. And I try to get all my ingredients kind of out and ready to go so I don't have to do too much. One key thing for brown sugar, and this will be something that, it's just passed on knowledge, is when you're doing anything with brown sugars, you pack it. So what that means is you're actually pushing in the sugar as much can be in the container or the measure that you're doing. I'm actually doubling this recipe because it's one of my family's favorites. So if I'm going to go through the work of actually making it, I'm going to make more than one. So we're going to need 2 2/3 cups sugar. And what I do is I put all of the sugars in the mixing bowl to begin with, and I'll do the powder, like the flour and the cocoa powder, separately, because we're going to sift that, because sometimes they can get lumps and things that you don't want it to be in your thing. So we are going to get this all measured, and you'll see that when I mean about pack is I actually use my hands and quite firmly pack this in, so it's actually quite firm and solid. And it comes out almost like what you think of like a sandcastle at the beach. Now all of these cookies are going to be high test. I do not skimp, and I don't do gluten-free. I use oil, I use butter, I use eggs. I don't use any kind of, I was going to say anything to make them light. Everything is fat. So let's see, oil will go in here, anything wet will go in here. For the dry ingredients, you're going to need, normally it would be 3/4 cup, but this will be a cup of cocoa powder. So it'll be 1.5 cups I'll need. I have my tried and true old time sifter that I use. Again, this is what I'm talking about with the cocoa, is it becomes a little lumpy. So by using a sifter, that kind of breaks it down to make it so it's more usable. And yes, I do measure, but I don't go too crazy because it all works out in the end. And let's see, and this would be, double would be 1.5 cups. Okay, and then we have our flour. For the flour, I use 1 3/4 cups, which will actually be doubled as well. This I usually fluff up the flour, and I use a knife to cut so I can get my true measure. And what I'm going to do is get my 2, and I'll have another 1.5 ready to go. And it's just a matter of twirling it. And you'll see that everything kind of mixes in together. And then once this goes down a little bit, I'll add the last 1.5 cups into it. And this will break up any lumps, clumps. And then with this too is we also have, it's espresso powder, or if you have instant coffee. We usually use the instant coffee, which I have not gotten out yet. All right, for this it's actually 2 teaspoons, so we're gonna actually have to do 4 teaspoons. And again, I kind of put it through the mill, only because then it kind of will break up these clumps a little bit. And it's just a quick measure. Now, I know a lot of people will use different flour mills and things like that, but I always go back to the old-fashioned stuff, only because the fact that it's just stuff I've used and I have. Next will be a teaspoon of baking powder. Now, baking powder does kind of the same thing as the cocoa powder. It can get a little lumpy, so again, you want to make sure you maybe use a mill to get that finer. And again, it's your teaspoon, and this is where the whole chemistry thing comes out. So you want to make sure you have the right ratio. So there's my 1, 2. And again, this is, if you can see the lumps, these are all the things that I'm breaking up by using this. And if it just keeps spinning around, eventually it all works out into a powder. This recipe doesn't have butter in it, and a lot of times I'll use salted butter, so I'll omit the butter from it, from my recipes. But since this isn't, I'll actually go ahead, and it's supposed to be 1/4 teaspoon per batch. I kind of use enough, but I don't overdo it. I just kind of like scant, so not quite 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we are going to need some pepper. And these are actually like Mocha Krinkles, but they have a little bit of a kick to them. And I only need 1/8 teaspoon for this recipe. So again, I mean, you're looking at 1/4 teaspoon. And that's it. So that's the dry ingredient. And then we're going to work on the wet. Now the wet is, we already have the sugar in here, so we have the brown sugar. We're going to need 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. And this is a oil thing that I use all the time, and I just keep reusing it because it's got a nice little measure. So I do my 1/3 cup 3 times. And then we need 1/2 cup of sour cream. And again, I mean, a lot of times I'll use store brand products because they are going to be in the cookies. But with this case, I had baked potatoes not too long ago and had some sour cream left over. So I was saving it for this recipe because I knew it was coming up to be Christmas cookie time. I'll just go ahead and add that to the batter. Now I am not known for my, I was going to say clean cooking. I'm more of the Julia Childs, like to make a lot of mess in my kitchen. Have dishes strewn usually. So I'm trying to be neat today. Next we're going to put in 2 eggs and then the vanilla. And I always kind of break them in a container on the side, only because there's sometimes either you break a shell or something gets in there and you want to not have that end up in your cookies. And we'll have the recipe written in the somewhere on the site, and so everybody will be able to see what the ingredients list is. So right now, this is mixing, and once it's all kind of blended in together, I'll begin to add my dry ingredients to it. Okay, so what I try to do with this is I will add a little bit of this at a time, only because the fact that if not, it blows up all over the kitchen and you have cocoa powder everywhere. The nice thing about these is they tend to have a long shelf life, and this time of year, a lot of my cookies and things I'll put in like boxes or containers and just keep them out on the porch. They're still cool enough where they last quite a while. And being that it's probably the end of November, we just had Thanksgiving, these will last right up through till Christmas and still be good. A lot of these I'll make like little gift boxes with a variety of cookies, and that's usually what we'll give to friends and neighbors for Christmas. And hence the making a mess in the kitchen. That's good. That's cooking with Heidi. Now this batter is a little bit thicker, but we ultimately want to do is we want to make them into like 1-inch balls that we're going to roll in the powdered sugar. So right now this would be just too loose to do that. So as soon as this is blended, which it kind of looks like a thicker cake batter, then what I'll do is I'm going to just kind of scrape down the sides. I'm going to put it in another bowl and we'll set it out to chill. And then once it's chilled, and I mean it does take a good 3 or 4 hours to chill, depends on where you put it and how cold it is. As soon as it is workable and you can make it into balls where it doesn't kind of squish into itself, then you know you're ready to go. And I do tend to use my fingers a lot, but I don't like them. Okay, so this will go to the sink, and I will put some saran wrap on this to kind of keep it covered and clean while it's chilling, and go put it out in my outdoor fridge. Okay, the Mocha Krinkles have chilled about 3 to 4 hours outside on the porch. It's really cold. And now it's just a matter of taking the batter and making them into little balls, probably about the size of a quarter, a little bit bigger, and then rolling them in powdered sugar and then placing them on the pan. You're going to continue to do this until you've used all the batter. It usually takes me, I think I yield on a double batch like this, maybe 60 to 70 cookies, sometimes more. They're very easy. I think you just basically do enough powdered sugar to cover them, because what will happen is as they bake, they open, they flatten a little bit, and they start to crack. So you'll have the darker veins of the chocolate inside and then the powder on the outside. And they're kind of an interesting looking cookie. And with a little bit of coffee and pepper, it kind of gives them a different kind of flavor. Okay, so these are ready to go. You'll see that they cracked, and they have that little bit of a veiny looking thing with the chocolate, the powdered sugar. I let them sit for 1 or 2 minutes on the trays before I actually move them over to the cooling racks, just to kind of set a little bit, and then I'll move them over. All right, so there we have another cookie to share with you all that I hope you'll at least try and make. Again, these are one of our family's favorite cookies, and so I hope you give it a try. And if you want to send some pictures of your cookies that I've made, we'd love to see those too. All right, so happy baking.